In this video, I'm going to show you how to create applique, which is an applied design that you can put onto fabric. You can do letters, shapes, numbers, and create various images by layering different fabrics. Here's an example of a good applique and a bad applique. The difference is the stitching that's been done around the outside edge. You can see on this one here, the zigzag stitch is wide, but it's really close together and it's fully covering the edges of the fabric. That's how it looks on the back. This one here isn't doing such a great job at covering the edges. It's almost missed it here in some places, and it's spread out quite far, meaning that the fabric can still fray around the edges. So the equipment that you'll need to complete your applique is, first of all, you'll need to decide what color fabric do you want your letters, numbers, shapes, whatever it is that your design is going to be. Choose a color and cut yourself a piece that is big enough for the design that you want to put on there. You'll also need to have your backing fabric or your project that you would be putting your design onto. You'll need some applique paper from the roll that says applique paper. It's crunchy and it just feels like paper. I've cut this piece off here just to show you that when you separate it, which you won't want to do, but I'm just doing this so you can see, when I separate, there's what looks like quite a thick, almost like a spider web on there. That there is glue. It doesn't feel like glue, but when you iron this this paper, that will melt and stick to your fabric. So the backing paper works like a protection between the iron and the glue. You'll also need stabilizer. This is going to be a backing, and it helps to stabilize your fabric, and it looks like quite a thick, meshy bonded fabric. It does rip like that there, and it's got the stabilizer tie on it. So I've cut this here. I need to figure out which side has the glue, and then I'm going to place that face down onto the back of my yellow piece of fabric, and I'm going to take it to the iron and I'm going to iron it. I purposely cut this paper smaller than my yellow piece of fabric because if it was bigger and I positioned it like this and I go to iron it, all this edge here that's hanging over will stick to the ironing board. If I got this up the wrong way and I had it that way and I go to iron it, this paper will stick to the iron and it makes a massive mess. So please make sure you've got it glue side facing down, nothing's hanging over the edges, and then you can iron it until it is stuck there. Here I've now ironed my piece of applique paper down onto my yellow fabric. It's now stuck down pretty well, but if I try to, I can lift the paper and peel it up just to show you. You can leave your paper on just for now. You can sort of see where the glue has stayed. It doesn't feel sticky because it's only activated by heat. So when it's cool, it's not sticky. So you can leave that paper on just for now. You're going to flip it over and you'll end up putting your design onto here. When you put your design onto your fabric, you'll want to use a friction pen. These are our special pens that when we iron them, they disappear. So you can draw anything, and if you make a mistake, just go and re-iron it and it will come off. That's why we want to keep the paper on the back. So if you do draw on here and you make a mistake and you want to go and iron it off, you can still do that because the protective paper is there. So I've drawn an H onto my one, a capital H. Now that I've drawn that on there, I can peel the paper off and remove it. And I've still got that applique paper or the adhesive stuck to the back there. I'm now going to take this piece. I'm going to cut out my H, and then that H is going to be put onto here, and I'll iron it and it will stick. Okay, so now I have my H stuck down to my backing fabric. The applique paper works a little bit like double-sided tape. It just holds it in place so that then I'll be able to go and do my zigzag stitch around the outside edge and it won't move and I don't have to put any pins in there. Now with the stabilizer, I'm going to cut myself a piece that is going to cover the back area of the H. So it needs to be slightly larger than the H, and it's going to go onto the back. So with this backing stabilizer, I'm going to place it on the back there like that, making sure that it's covering the area where my H is. And then I'm just going to pop 2 pins into my fabric, just around the outside edge here, just to hold it in place. And that's going to be included when you do the zigzag stitching. It's to stop your fabric from bunching up. I'm actually just going to put 4 pins, sides and top and bottom. Now I need to adjust the settings on my sewing machine because I want to have a zigzag stitch, but I want the zigzag to be quite close together. So I'm just going to check all my settings are on the normal starting positions. I want the widest zigzag possible, so I'm going to turn the outside dial of the stitch width to 5, and then I know I want to have my zigzag quite close together, so I'm going to see what it looks like if I do it on 0.5, which is in between 0 and 1. I've got a piece of scrap fabric here, which I'm just going to fold in half, and then I'm just going to do a test stitch just to see what that looks like. Okay, that's pretty close together. It might almost be a little bit too much close together, so I'm just going to go back here and just make the stitch slightly bigger, maybe a little bit more like 0.75, so that's in between half and 1, and I'll go back and see what that's like over here. That's much better. I'm happier with that. It moves easier. My machine doesn't feel like it's just stitching in one place, but it still looks quite good. So I'm going to stick with those settings when I go around my edge. To make sure I get the alignment correct and the needle will jump either side of the edge of my fabric, I'm going to line up this yellow edge with the line that's in the center of my presser foot. I'm going to lower my needle so I know which way it's going to start. And I'm just going to line it up with the very beginning of my yellow fabric before I drop my presser foot. You don't necessarily have to start and finish with a zigzag because you just need to overlap wherever you start and finish. So where you start, come back around and go over the top of where you started when you finish. Here I'm about to do the last little finishing edge. I have decided that I will do a back stitch when I get to the finish here, so I'll show you what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to use the hand wheel so I can get it exactly where I want it, and now I'm going to do my back stitch. Just a couple of stitches just to seal it and finish it off. And there is my finished zigzag edge. It's looking a little bit like maybe I sewed too fast over here and it's spread it apart a little bit. I might actually go back and do another row of stitching over the top of that to cover up those gaps a wee bit more. Here's the finished applique stitching. I've taken the pins out, and now on the back where I've got excess of my stabilizer, I'm going to fold my fabric out of the way, use my scissors, and I'm just going to chop off all the stuff here that I don't need to be on there anymore. If this was a piece of clothing, you wouldn't really want this touching your body. It might itch or tickle, so you just go around and you just trim off all the extra bits you don't need. Just like that. So that's the back and that's the front. So quite a time-consuming process. You wouldn't want to do too many letters. You don't necessarily have to do a zigzag stitch. You might want to do a straight stitch, but be prepared that the edges of your fabric would fray over time. You could also look at doing a decorative stitch as well. It's a good idea to experiment and just play around and see what you can come up with and what you like the look of.